Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing how your ex's value declines. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing how your ex's value declines. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you need to align the scales of value. At the time of a breakup, your dumper's value skyrockets, but this will likely decline in the future. In today's podcast, I'll explain how your ex's value declines in 3 points. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is choice equals value. So when we consider today's podcast and about how your ex's value declines, we first of all need to go back to the beginning, back to when you were in a long-term, loving romantic relationship. And during this time, you and your soon-to-be former partner were feeling a high level of romantic emotional attraction for one another. Now, not only were you feeling this level of attraction, you were also somewhat similar on the scales of value. Long-term relationships are most successful when both partners are similar-ish on the scales of value. So your value levels are going to be fairly similar, and additionally to this, you're both feeling a high level of romantic emotional attraction for one another. Now, for various potential reasons, unfortunately for you, the dumpee, your now ex-dumper's feelings towards you regarding romantic emotional attraction would have started to fall. And when they hit the necessary low point, when that romantic emotional attraction level sank to this low point, unfortunately, this is when they would have actioned the breakup. They became a dumper and you became a dumpee. Now, this is where point number 1 comes into play. Choice equals value. Your now ex-dumper made a choice. Their choice was to end your relationship. And at that point, they automatically increased their value level because they made a choice. They made a decision. They had a thought and it went through. Your thought, unfortunately, didn't, because you didn't want the relationship to end. But no matter what you said, did, whether you begged, pleaded, reasoned, it had no effect. Your ex-dumper became your ex-dumper, and therefore, they became a higher valued person within the realms of this connection and breakup. It doesn't mean that they're a better person than you. It just means that within the confines of this situation, they are the higher value individual, and unfortunately for you, the dumpee, you are the lower value individual. And this is because what you wanted didn't take place, and what they wanted did take place. We have to understand that at the time of a breakup, your ex-dumper has an abundance mindset. They've made a decision that they believe is going to provide them with different opportunities moving forward to give them a more fulfilling life. Now, this might sound very sad, frustrating, or scary, but if we break it down and understand why somebody ends a relationship, they're ending it ultimately because they do not believe that this relationship is going to fulfill them in the future. For whatever reason it is, maybe multiple reasons, they feel that by going down a different path, they're more likely to feel ultimate happiness and fulfillment. That is why they're making that choice. And they have an abundance mindset because they believe they can find a better outcome. Now, again, this might not be easy for you to hear as a dumpee, but please keep listening because it's not all doom and gloom. You know, the sun will always rise after darkness. And if you listen through today's podcast, you will understand what I mean by this. But currently, at the time of a breakup, your ex-dumper is the chooser. Now, you have to understand that everybody in life is either a beggar or a chooser. Are you somebody who begs, or are you somebody who chooses? Now, in this particular instance, your ex-dumper has chosen their path. They have chosen their route. They have chosen their action. Whereas you as a dumpee likely have begged for this not to take place. You've likely begged, reasoned, as I've said earlier, you wanted something which didn't happen. So in this position, you are the beggar and your ex-dumper is the chooser. People who are choosers in life are going to have a higher value. People who are begging in life are going to unfortunately have a lower value. Now, this might not be the same throughout all of your life. Depending on what you do for a living, for instance, you might be a chooser in that respect rather than a beggar. It doesn't mean you are a beggar in every single instance, which is why it's important, and what I was saying earlier, that just because I'm saying that your ex-dumper is the higher value individual right now, it doesn't mean you're a low value person. It just means that within this situation, unfortunately, you are the lower value person. Okay, you're the lower value person within the breakup, within the connection. It doesn't mean you're low value at your job or within your friends, your family. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means within this situation, in connection to your now ex, you're the lower value individual because you are the beggar, they are the chooser. They have an abundance mindset. And that is why, as I explained in point number 1, choice equals value. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about how your ex's value declines. And point number 2 is big fish in a small pond. Now, if you're not familiar with that terminology, big fish in a small pond showcases and represents as an analogy that somebody is a person who is succeeding or seems to be somebody who has an abundance within a smaller situation. Whereas if they were to move into the quote-unquote larger pond, they're no longer going to be the big fish on campus, okay? So what we're connected to miss here is your ex-dumper, during your relationship, decided to end the connection. They could be described in this instance as a big fish in a small pond because they was in a relationship with just yourself. It's you and them. They've made a choice. They feel that they have an abundance mindset. They are the chooser. They're not the beggar. They're the person who's top of the class, at least in their subconscious. They might not consciously be thinking these thoughts, but subconsciously they're feeling top of the world. I've got somebody who wants to be in a relationship with me, but you know what? I think I can do better, so I'm going to move on. Okay? So maybe not consciously, but certainly subconsciously, your now ex-dumper is feeling that mentality of being top of a class. They're feeling like they're the top dog, you could say, the top fish within this analogy. But once we get out into the big wide world, they're no longer the big fish in the small pond. They're now just a regular, if not small fish, in a huge pond. Because now they're competing with everybody else. They're competing with everybody else and everybody else's situation regarding trying to find their way. Now, this isn't going to be as easy because they always had you as their safety net. They always had you as their cheerleader. They always had you making them feel top of the world. But now they're alone, and it can be somewhat of a shock. Yes, a dumper will be trying to do their own thing, living their life. I refer to it as the single honeymoon period, where for 6 to 12 months, a dumper will be doing their thing, and things might seem exciting, things might seem wonderful, things might seem new and refreshing. But they can also seem scary. They can seem daunting. They don't have that safety net of you anymore. They don't have somebody to tell them how great they are. They don't have somebody to make them feel wonderful and special. They're on their own. They've got to do their own thing. Now, you know how that feels because right now, dumpees, sadly, you're probably also feeling alone. And you're feeling that you don't have those options. But that's why it's so important to change your mindset. Because mindset is the key to not only trying to get your ex back, but allowing yourself to grow as a person, become a version 2.0, and find somebody even better than your ex. The difference between being a beggar or a chooser is ultimately mindset. And that's why sometimes people come to me via my audio coaching service for motivation. They want somebody to support them, lift them up, and help them raise their self-esteem and confidence. And that is something that I do, along with helping people try and increase the chance of getting their ex back. If you believe that my audio coaching service could help you, then please go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate by speaking to you one-on-one via my audio coaching service. So right now you're not feeling great. You're a dumpee. Things don't seem as wonderful as obviously they did in the past, but they will do. They can do, and they're going to, as long as you move forward every single day. But right now, your ex-dumper is also feeling slightly unsure of themselves in their new surroundings. They don't have you as a backup. They don't have you to support them. And although they're trying to do their best to make their way, they're not necessarily going to get that confidence boost to really allow them to think that they're the king or the queen of a castle. They now feel like they're just a number. They're not somebody special. They're out there on their own, and they're no longer the big fish in the small pond. Like I said, they're a medium, if not small fish, in a huge pond. And this is where their value starts to decline. So your ex-dumper moved through the breakup with an increased value. All of the begging and pleading you would have done would just have inflated their value even higher than it would initially have been because they became a chooser. They ended the relationship. They had their choice, abundance mindset has automatically raised their self-esteem, their confidence, and their value. But on top of that, any begging or pleading you may have done, saying things such as, you complete me, I need you, all of those things is going to make them feel even more valuable, even more popular. But right now they don't have that, and therefore their value starts to decline. Now, I'm not saying at this point that their value is through the floor, but we start to see the trickling down of them realising they're out there alone, they don't have you, and actually, they're not perfect. You know, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, dumpee, and your ex-dumper is certainly not perfect. We're all human beings. And all of a sudden, your ex-dumper is starting to realise and understand they really aren't perfect. You know, they don't have you in their corner. And this whole small fish in a large pond can really bring that value down. And although it's not rock bottom, it's probably already lower than before the breakup took place. So it's already reduced in level beneath the boost they got from a breakup. And right now it's probably lower than when the breakup happened. It's probably lower than when they was in a relationship with you because you were always supporting them. Even if you think back and think, well, I did things wrong, we had arguments or whatever, you were still by their side. They still felt your presence. You're not there, and therefore they don't have that feeling of pushing them up. Their value is declining, and it's declining at a rate that they don't expect. This can really make a dumper question themselves. And this is where we move into point number 3. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about how your ex's value declines. And point number 3 is the grass isn't always greener. So at the time of a breakup, your ex-dumper made a choice because they believed the grass was greener on the other side. They believed that they would move forward on a path that would allow them to feel the satisfaction and fulfillment that sadly they weren't feeling at the end of a relationship. They didn't feel it towards the end. The romantic emotional attraction dropped. They decided to end the relationship. So at that point, they felt it was worth the risk. They felt the grass is going to be greener. But the truth is, the grass isn't always greener. In fact, a lot of the time, the grass isn't greener. So somebody's ended a relationship, they've become a dumper, they've now moved into that larger pond. Their value, which had had a big boost during the time of a breakup, is now trickling down. Is now lower than it actually was when they were in a relationship with you. And now they have that moment of realization where they're having to consider, did I even make the right choice? Okay, because right now I'm not feeling wonderful. Right now I'm feeling quite lonely. Right now, the things which were exciting initially are a bit boring. You know, I don't know whether I like this, being out in the world in this large pond. I'm feeling kind of small. Their value is trickling down and down and down. And when they hit that point where they really self-reflect, this is when we're going to be really considering, did I make the right choice? How is my dumpee doing? Have I heard from them? Do I know anything about them? You know, depending on what you as a dumpee have been doing during this time, is going to somewhat dictate how your ex-dumper feels at this stage. When they self-reflect, they're going to be wondering about you. And they're going to be thinking about you. Now, if they don't know anything about you, this intrigue could be taking them over the edge to a point where they need to reach out to you. If they do know a few things, and the things that are good from a dumpee's perspective, living your life to the full, making new connections, becoming a version 2.0, then again, it could be pushing them over that edge to reach out to you. Now, unfortunately, if they've heard things about you which are basically you chasing them, chase, needy, they're going to be thinking, well, my dumpee was kind of annoying, they didn't respect my decision, they frustrated me, I know I don't need them within my life right now, and I'm going to push on and try and find somebody who can fulfill me, because I don't really want that lack of respect of my decision, the chasing, the hounding, it was kind of frustrating to me. Okay, if a dumper feels that way, then at this moment in time of self-reflection, unfortunately for the dumpee, they're probably going to move forward and continue to try and find their way. However, if that didn't happen, or if it only happened a small amount, this is when this self-reflection can really pull down your ex-dumper's value even further. If they believe that you as a dumpee are living your life to the full, either because they haven't heard anything, or what they have heard is very impressive to them about how the dumpee is getting on, they're going to be believing that since the breakup took place, the dumpee has grown and their value has skyrocketed, and themselves, the dumper, is feeling low as I've described, and they believe that their life isn't going the way they wanted to. So they feel, if my ex-dumpee's value has risen, then my value as a dumper has dropped. And you have a change around, a power swap. You have a scenario where all of a sudden the dumpee's value is high, the dumper's value is low. And this is where we see the dumper's value decline. How your ex's value declines is through this process. Initially it's sky high. Then they realise they're out in the world all alone, and they get a little scared and worried and concerned, not feeling that support from you. It starts to drop slowly but surely. And then when they self-reflect and believe that you're doing better than them, their value will drop even further. Now, the interesting thing is, when a dumper reaches out, when they feel that their value is really low, the dumpee might feel that vibe during the communication, and because now they're the higher valued person, they might not actually want to reconnect. Many dumpees feel that they've outgrown their dumper and don't actually want them back at the time of the dumper reaching out. Of course, this will depend on a case-by-case situation. But when we consider how your ex's value declines, it will happen over time, it can often seem a shock to the dumper, let alone the dumpee, and what we have to understand from a dumpee's perspective is that if you do your bit, grow as a person, make new connections, live your life to the full, there is every chance that one day you will have the choice. You will be the chooser, and they will be the beggar. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.